Okay, we read chapter 10, parties and going on. um, don't want to say anything. I'm tired. Had a long day yesterday. I didn't read last night because I was so beat and tired. Couldn't hardly move. I've been dealing with heat. First time in my life, well, for decades. I've been out working in the heat, not a problem. I'm not sweating, sweat pouring from my body. I don't know what the difference is. Eating organic, I'm not sure. Sleeping better, drinking better, I don't know. But I'm doing a whole bunch better. Um, worked on my chainsaw today, my new chainsaw. I worked on my weed whacker. We're just spiffing that up to use it. And moved a dog and four pregnant pups down to a new cage where they'd be safe from the damn goats. And then had a little issue that took quite a while, later into the night. So anyway, I didn't read last night, so too bad. Fire and smoke. This is what I had last night. Fire and smoke. Little boo boo. Okay. Not everyone was happy about the big board and the recent changes it had made in the town. Several parents. Let me get my water going here. Get my battery out of the way. Okay. Several parents complained about it. They didn't see how such a system could be fair. Those parents with children ranked in the lowest on the big board were especially upset. The next day, on Saturday evening, 5 days after the point system had been in operation, a group of parents decided to take action. 12-gauge shotguns. They went to the toy store to share their feelings with Mrs. Happy. Sheriff Kramer was in uniform as he walked through the front door, followed by a committee of parents. "Good afternoon, Sheriff," Mrs. Happy said with a twinkle in her eye and her new and improved smile. "I'm just about to close up. Mrs. Happy, we've come as a kind of committee or delegation, you might say, to speak to you about the big board," Sheriff Kramer began. He coughed and looked uncomfortable. The other parents introduced themselves quickly. "Is there some sort of problem?" Mrs. Happy asked. "Well, yes, there is," Sheriff Kramer said. "A lot of us feel that this point system way of ranking children is bad for the kids. I've had complaints about name calling and now number calling, as they put it. Low numbers. It's just awful," a woman blurted out. Her name was Mrs. Hubert. "My little Nicholas is having a terrible time with his friends. They just tease him until he cries." "What's Nicholas's rank?" the old woman asked. 564, Mrs. Hubert said in a soft, almost shameful voice. "I see," Mrs. Happy replied. "No wonder you're complaining. He's in the lowest 100. "That's just what we're talking about," Sheriff Kramer said. "This point system just seems to be causing trouble with the children, dividing them against..." You gargle with vinegar water. "Dividing them against..." "What are the ranks of your children, Sheriff?" the old woman asked. The twinkle was now gone from her eye. "That isn't the point here," Sheriff Kramer began. "But of course it's the point," Mrs. Happy said. "I happen to know your children currently have no rank number at all. They won't even play the game. They haven't even been in my store since I put up the big board. I'm sure you're upset about such a thing, but I can't help it if they don't want to play. That's just the rules of the game. No play, no rank. Life doesn't just stop because a few people are poor at sports and don't want to play." "Who's making these rules, as you call them?" Sheriff Kramer asked, in exasperation. "Why, the town, of course, and society in general," Mrs. Happy said. "That's always how the point system works. No one complains that your children get graded on the test at school or that the school issues a report card. In fact, the only people that do seem to complain are the ones who don't do as well as the others, or the parents of those children who don't do well. My advice to you is to help your children do better. Your children are certainly talented enough, Sheriff. Surely you encourage them to play in the rules by the rules of life and perform as well as they can. Yes, but our whole society works this way, don't you see?" Mrs. Happy said. I'm not making it through this chapter. I'm sorry. "It's performance that counts. As a lawman, you know the jails are full of those persons who break the law, who didn't perform up to accepted standards." "In a way, you have a point," the sheriff nodded, "but this all seems so vague. I mean, is who enters all the data into this big board? Scores and point totals seem to change on the hour. I've never seen anything like it." Well, people in situations change on the hour, Mrs. Happy said and laughed sympathetically. But you have a good question. Unfortunately, it's all too technical and complicated for an old woman like me. I just play the game. My late husband understood computers, rest his soul, but as far as me, well, I don't know much about it. I only know they work. But I can tell you that Goliath Industries has all the exclusive patents on the big boards. But how do they enter information? Sheriff Kramer demanded. Then he sighed. Well, that would be telling trade secrets, and I can't do that, Mrs. Happy said and smiled sweetly. But I can tell you they are very advanced scientifically. The big board just records things as they are. I mean, all the information is just common knowledge in this town. The big board is really doing this community a service by teaching the children at a young age what is expected of them. Now, who can complain about a gift like that? But my Nicholas is ranked in the bottom 100, Mrs. Hubert moaned. That's just not fair. He's such a delicate child. So now we're getting honest, aren't we? Mrs. Happy said with a grin. You're ashamed that the little boy can't quite make the grade, aren't you? That's not it at all, she said, tears coming to her eyes. He's such a fragile child. Why must there be such a ranking to begin with? Encourages bullies. That's not for me to decide, Mrs. Happy said simply. As I said before, I don't make the rules. The point system has always been in place. The big board is just a service to help clarify where the children need improvement. Goliath Industries has found them very helpful. In fact, they use big boards in all their places of business. It's a great management tool. You mean more of these big boards are in operation? Sheriff Kramer asked. Of course, they're everywhere, Mrs. Happy said. I would think you'd know that. After all, Goliath is one of the biggest corporations in the world. This is a small big board, actually. The one going up in the new factory will be much larger and more comprehensive. I also might add that several police departments have found big boards quite useful, too. I really would love to chat some more with you all, but I do have an appointment out at the factory. Yeah, right. The old woman ushered Sheriff Kramer and the others toward the door. A long black limousine was waiting in front of the store. A man in a gray uniform got out and opened the back door. We still haven't settled this problem, Mrs. Happy, Sheriff Kramer said as he walked out onto the sidewalk. I can see that, Sheriff, the old woman replied, looking straight into his eyes, but you might want to remember that the children are playing along with the point system with great dedication. Most parents appreciate the point system, too. They see the value. They want their children to improve themselves to be the best they can be, but there's always a few poor sport parents whose children don't quite make the grade. It's not just a case of being poor sports, Sheriff Kramer said. I don't think the identity of our children should depend on. I really must run, Sheriff, the old woman said, but if I were you, I'd check around town before you go begin attacking the big board in Goliath Industries. These are hard times, and Goliath is helping this town. I don't need to remind you that elections are coming up in just a few months. What better example could you have of the point system in action than our noble tradition of free elections? I'd be careful whom you criticize if I were you. If you rocked about too much, you may just end up in the water. Is that some kind of threat, Mrs. Happy? Sheriff Kramer asked. His face was red. Just an observation, the old woman said sweetly. But surely I'm not telling you something you don't already know, am I? I must be running along. Good day. The old woman smiled once more, then got into the waiting limo. The little group of parents stood silently on the sidewalk and watched the car drive away. Daniel was upstairs in his room that Saturday evening. The night was falling. Night was falling. Night was falling. He was looking out his window at the street when he saw John and Susan Kramer pedal slowly by on their Spirit Flyer bicycles. They stopped at the end of the block and were talking to each other, looking out at his house. John Kramer was shaking his head. Daniel wondered what they were saying. Then they rode slowly back toward his house. When they parked in front on the sidewalk, Daniel was up in a flash. He ran downstairs. His mother was in the kitchen outside of the front door. Denise was in the living room. The doorbell rang before Daniel could get there. Daniel flung the door open so quickly that Susan seemed startled. Hi, Daniel said out of breath. Before you say anything, I want you to know that things aren't like they seem. With the Cobra Club and everything. I mean, I'm trying to work things out, but it's complicated. Well, I wondered, Susan said carefully. She stared at Daniel, but he couldn't read her expression. It seems like you've been avoiding us, but that's not unusual since the point system started. We've got to talk. Something is up, and we need your help tonight. You got to get to the Spirit Flyer and help us. We need more riders. Just then, Denise stuck her head out the door. She looked at Susan and John, then walked back through the house. She'll tell my brother, Daniel fretted, watching Denise go into the kitchen. What do you need help for? Something is going to happen tonight, we think, Susan said in a whisper. We only got glimpses of it from the mirrors on our bikes. But we're almost sure this is the night, and we may be able to stop it if we have more Spirit Flyers helping us. So you need to come with us tonight. I'd like to help, Daniel said honestly. Daniel, Mrs. Bailey said. She pushed open the door. She stared at Susan quietly for a moment, then sighed. So it is these children. I will not have this sneaking around behind my back, young lady. No one is sneaking anything, Daniel said, his face crimson with embarrassment. Mrs. Bailey kept staring at Susan and her spirit flyer. I'll not have my son's head filled with this kind of nonsense, his mother said sharply. Now take those ridiculous bicycles and leave the premises. Susan nodded and turned around. John Kramer stared at Daniel's mother in surprise. What's eating her? He whispered. Let's just get out of here, Susan said softly. Daniel stood in the doorway as Susan and John rode away. More than anything, he wished he could follow them and help them. Really, Daniel, I'm disappointed in you, his mother said. I thought you knew my feelings about those children. Daniel got a frog down there in my throat. Daniel didn't answer as he stared out after the two riders. His mother shut the door as she pulled back inside. Just outside of town, a black limousine that had carried Mrs. Happy parked in the front of the building of the Goliath Industries factory. Although the factory is mostly dark, there is activity inside the boiler room. A small isinglass window stuck in the heavy iron door showed the raging fire inside the largest boiler. Standing near the big furnace, two figures stood talking in the flickering orange light. One was Mrs. Happy and the other was Cyrus Cartwright, the old exec. I saw the whole thing from my office, the thin man said and nodded. The ones doing the worst always whine the loudest. It's the same old story, but that will change soon enough. They'll have bigger worries than the point system after this Monday. The arrangements, including this town bank have gained approval then, Mrs. Happy asked. Of course, Mr. Cartwright said with a voice like a rusty door hinge. Of course. Not only here, but all over the country. This will be a feast. By the end of the week, Goliath and other order businesses will have gained control over thousands of hurting banks, not to mention the businesses that fall in the aftermath. The fear factor should be ripe then. Notice, order. Well, that's what the camera is. Come on, focus. Put my finger on it. Right there. I'll just read it. See, order is capitalized. Order is like New World Order. Goliath and other order businesses will have gained control over thousands of hurting banks, not to mention the businesses that fall in the aftermath. Oh boy, yippee-ki-yay. The fear factor should be ripe then, Mrs. Happy said. More than ripe, absolutely rotten, Mr. Cartwright said with a smile. When you threaten their money, the fear boils hot and sticky as tar. Centerville has qualified to receive 4,000 more Z-14s to do the job. Only Z-level, Mrs. Happy asked with a frown. I made the usual complaints, but this is a huge operation. Not only here, but all over the world, Mr. Cartwright said. As I mentioned, this may be one of the biggest worldwide operations of all time. All units on all levels are assigned. None of us were prepared. But there should be enough fear to go around for all. They'll find it easy to attach. We'll be eating ashes on this one. So the New World Order and fear. Notice the fear factor thing. I talked with a friend today down in Texas, and worried about this, worried about that, worried about the other thing. I'm like, I don't care about all that crap. Don't talk to me all that fear mongering bullshit on the internet. I mean, I get tired of it really fast. I said, look, I'm not living in that kingdom. I'm not living in this world. I'm living in the next world. I'm living in the kingdom of God. Don't worry about all that malarkey. A row of sealed red boxes were stacked neatly on pallets near the big boiler. Mr. Cartwright lifted up one of the boxes and set it at his feet. He cut the seal with his fingernail and opened the flaps. The box was filled to the top with writhing black snakes. One rose up in the air like a cobra. On the throat was a white X inside a white circle. The snake hissed, opening its mouth. The sharp fangs oozed a dark, gooey substance that looked like liquid hate. Mr. Cutright pushed the snake down and closed the box. They're packing 20 Z-14s to a box these days, he said with a smile. The stack of boxes seemed to vibrate as muffled hisses were heard. And they recommend a fire release? The old woman asked. We'll get better, even more distribution over the whole town in the smoke, Cyrus Cutright replied. We just dumped them in. They're also harder to detect by any possible snoopers, too. Mrs. Happy nodded as she stared at the shaking red boxes. The snakes inside knew it was time. They were eager to meet the fires of freedom. Mr. Cutright opened the door of the boiler. The flash of flames didn't seem to faze the thin man. He threw the whole box inside. A great hiss filled the air as the box burst into flames. Thick black smoke poured along with streams of black tarry liquid. The liquid bubbled and boiled into more smoke. Mrs. Happy handed the man another box, which he heaved into the fire. As the fire grew hotter, they threw in more boxes faster and faster. They were both laughing by the time the last box burst into flames. The black smoke poured out of the top of the tall factory smokestack. It had been over 15 years since the big furnace had been used. Well, that sounds like pollution to me, EPA. One was meant to see the smoke. An occasional ember flew up in the air, glowing hot orange before dying. The moon was so down, and the sky was churning with heavy clouds. The wind blew toward the east, carrying the smoke toward town. But someone was watching. High in the sky, a girl and a boy on two old red bicycles saw the smoke coming. They had been sitting 200 feet up in the sky as if sitting in chairs. The bikes were motionless. In the darkness, the smoke blew quickly. In the dark, smoke blew quickly. They smelled the awful odors first. It smells like rotten eggs and burning tires, Susan Kramer said, covering her mouth. Turn on your light, John Kramer yelled. The spirit flyers were equipped with old headlights with a simple switch. For a moment, the thick smoke seemed to be cut by the bright light, but then, as if powered by weak batteries, the lights grew dim. The cloud of smoke closed in around the children. I can't breathe, John gasped. We've got to get out of here, Susan yelled, and then coughed. She aimed the handlebars toward the ground and began to pedal. John followed her, and the smoke blew faster right behind them. A rumble and a screeching noise came out of the cloud as they sped across the sky over the town. Susan looked back once and saw two enormous red eyes behind her. She pedaled faster in retreat, wondering why the lights didn't work like before. By the time the children had landed in the driveway of their house, the smoke was falling all over town like a stinky fog. I knew we needed help, John said. He pushed the spirit flyer into the garage. Susan was right behind him. She shut the door. Three of us might have made a difference, Susan said, her chest heaving. She slapped her clothes, trying to get rid of the dark presence that she felt was all over her like some kind of invisible slime. That was awful. My light just went dim, it seemed, like it ran out of power. The generators, John blurted out. That's how you use them. We've never really known how they worked. Susan cocked her head, thinking to herself. She reached over and touched the little bottle-shaped instrument that was attached to the framework of the rear tire. You may be right, she said. Let's go try them. She opened the big door quickly. The smoke was gone. Only the faint smell of rotten eggs and tar lingered in the dark night. Both children knew immediately that whatever had been done was done. They stared up into the dark, cloudy sky, wondering what had come over their town so quickly. Okay, there you go. Anybody on? One. I don't know what the one is. One thumbs up. Okay. Grant Bennett 333. Hey, is Ray on? Ray thinks everybody's young. Ray thinks I'm young. He called me extra. Grant, how you doing? Grant, you don't believe that silly stuff that the earth is flat, do you? Take a rush of shit about that from everybody? Yeah. Anyway. Someday I'm going to do a video on that. Flat Earth. Think I should? Prove the truth. Ha ha ha. You can't prove a truth to somebody who's brainwashed, right? Right. My friend's daughter, I asked her, ex-friend, former friend, she was in first grade at the time. I said, "Do you have a globe in your classroom?" "Oh yeah, we have a globe, but you don't. When you get to third grade, you don't have a globe anymore. Yeah, works. The damage has been done. You're already brainwashed. You're already an idiot." Yeah. Anyway, all right. Good night, guys. Good night, Ray. Good night, Grant. Grant. 333. 333 is 1/3 of a whole, right? 1/3. 33 and a third. Outside of that is 666 judgment. 333 designates a place of safety, an area of safety, a region. The Ozark Plateau is two facing 120-degree angles. And the word Mitzrayim, or Egypt, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Mitzrayim is the word for, well, the transliteration of it is Miseri or Misuri, Missouri, or Missouri. Yeah, think about that one. And that's 333. Two facing 120-degree angles. Okay. And Mitzrayim means, with the pointing and the vowels, always means two things: doubly distressed and doubly defended. So that just happens to be two double angles of the Ozark Plateau. All right. God bless everybody. Good night. Hallelujah. Bye-bye.